Welcome to Think, React, Lead, bringing you insights and strategies for thinking as an executive, reacting like a soldier, and leading in all aspects of your life. Here's your host, executive coach and leadership speaker, Dom Faussette.
Hey, welcome to the Think, React, Lead podcast. My name is Dom Faussette, and today we are going to talk about more speaking tips because it's so important. There's so many people that go to these conferences and go watch people speak, and they pay a hefty fee to see people speak. And recall the last time you've gone to a speaking conference, whether it be 3 hours or maybe a 3-day conference, how many times you yawned or checked your phone or were boring, right? The title of today's topic is PowerPoint or Power Punt. And so many people use PowerPoint. I recall a time last year where I walked in to speak a couple hours early. I think I was speaking at 10. I showed up at 8. And as I got there, the lady's running around with her little clipboard and she asked me, she's like, okay, we're all set. Everything's aligned for you. Where's your PowerPoint? And she said it with a lot of bravado. And my response to her was, I don't have a PowerPoint. And she looked back like shocked, almost upset. Why don't you have a PowerPoint? And I looked at her, and for those of you that know me, you know that I can have a pretty assertive look. But I looked at her and I said, I am my PowerPoint. She had nothing else to say. She couldn't even say, okay. She kind of stammered. Those were the sounds that she made. And she said, oh, so you'll be ready to be on at 10? I said, I'm ready to go on now if you need me to. But 10 is what we scheduled, and that's what I'm getting paid for. And that was pretty much end of story, right? PowerPoint or Power Punt. You are the PowerPoint. Like your story, your attachment to the audience. And I don't care why you're getting on stage, unless it's, I'd say like a business conference, like a medical conference, right? Or a tech specific conference where you work for a company and you have to bring up numbers, analytics. Like you're not going to sell anything because you work for this company. Then I can see a PowerPoint making sense. But most entrepreneurs are not going to be in a situation where they have to talk about 2017 metrics, 2017 numbers, and how that's going to impact the group or your department for 2018 as you break down quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. I mean, that all sounds boring, but sometimes most of the time in corporations, that's when you need a PowerPoint. An alternative to a PowerPoint is, and I use this a lot, is simply, and this is just a board, but it's paper, right? And this is a huge Post-it note board, and I can take the pieces and I can put them on an easel and talk. Let me explain to you why that's important. Recall the last time most adults sat in a presentation where the sound of paper or the facilitator was using paper. In my experience, most of that time was when they were children. Whether it was children's church, whether it was first grade, second grade, maybe, kindergarten. After about third or fourth grade, it's a whiteboard. And as you get into high school, it's PowerPoints. College is always PowerPoints. And then you get into the corporate world, PowerPoints. Most of us that are speakers or want to be a speaker will be speaking to adults. And when you're speaking to adults, they're tired of PowerPoints. This is why typically you'll speak and you'll see people sit with their arms crossed and they have a very stern face, because what's going through their mind is you can't share anything with them. There's nothing you as the speaker can tell them that they don't know. They probably walked on water prior to coming to see you speak. But I've noticed that in the rare occasions that I use something, and in this case, a paper or Post-it note paper on an easel, you'll see people start to sit back. They'll start to relax. They'll start to open their mind to something new. Why? Because paper and writing it's creativity. Subconsciously, your audience goes into, oh, what's going to show up next on this piece of paper? What is he or she going to write? Is their spelling correct? Maybe I can spell the word better. Or are they going to draw? Right? Typically, when you have paper outside of a corporate or conference environment, people are playing games, right? Remember Hangman, remember, and I'm dating myself, Pictionary, right? There's words and there's that you use when you're writing, and everybody's waiting to see what's next. But when you have a PowerPoint, typically, even if you get fancy, you have this like filtered word that comes up or filtered phrase that comes up. We all see it. Like everybody sees, it's boring. It's electronic. And then what does your audience do? They go to their phone, not to record you because you're awesome, but just to check their Facebook status, post on Instagram, talk about how boring the conference is. But when you use paper, if you have to use something, it allows you to quickly get to points, and it actually shortens the amount of talking you do on stage, because when you're writing, a lot of times, more oftentimes than not, you can't write and talk fast at the same time. So as you're writing, it allows the audience to really look closer, and they'll typically lean forward, right? Which is what you want when you're speaking, just because most people in an audience are typically over the age of 35 in most audiences. And we all know that, many people, their eyesight tends to kind of go, it's not as bright, or it's not as, it's not 20/20 like it was when, say, you were 20 years old or younger. So they'll lean forward to look. But when one person leans forward, the person next to them will typically lean forward. And you create this domino effect. So when you have everybody leaning forward to see what it is that you're going to write, and they hear the sound of the paper, and this also allows you to, you create engagement. It also allows you to ask questions, right? Everybody wants to answer a question. You write the answer down, which is great. So you are the PowerPoint. Another thing, so the PowerPoint, most people don't even know how to use a PowerPoint. And this is what happens. They get so caught up in graphics and making it pretty and information, like information overload, because like all of us, we've all created PowerPoints. And when you create a PowerPoint at home, you don't have audience interaction. So all you have is, oh, that looks cool. That looks cool. That looks cool. And next thing you know, you probably meant to put one point on one page on a PowerPoint. 20 pages later, you have all these great, fonts and these great pictures and all these things that move. And now you're entertained. You're literally entertaining yourself. And you're like, this is going to be cool. It's almost like this. Many of you have posted on Facebook or Instagram, and you know that post where you say to yourself, man, this post is awesome. Like, this is going to get so many likes. It's going to get shared. And man, it's just wonderful. You post it, crickets. Your PowerPoint does the same thing. You look like a 5-year-old with a pacifier as you're standing on stage. I hope none of you have a 5-year-old with a pacifier in their mouth, but if you do, I'm sure you have your reasons. But as it relates to you speaking on stage with a PowerPoint, you're dependent upon it. It's like your blankie or your binky, if most of you with kids know what I'm talking about. Don't depend on the PowerPoint. And then nothing creates a greater disconnect more than looking at the PowerPoint and turning your back to the audience. There's a rule of thumb is your audience should never see your backside. As wonderful as it might be, your audience shouldn't see it. Because when that happens, there's a break in person to person connection. So you and I are talking here. I look this way to look at my PowerPoint, and then we lose, just like you lost the connection with me during this conversation. Eye contact is huge. Eye contact is a nonverbal, but we all know that eye contact, more oftentimes than not, is more important than speaking. Eye contact says a lot. Eye contact is important during the pause. When you speak and you drive a point home, stop talking and just look at your audience and let the information sink in, right? There's making sure you understand what your audience remembers. Even if you have a 5-page or say a 5 to 8 page PowerPoint, you have a PowerPoint because you can't remember all of the information. That's why you have a PowerPoint. It gives you a reference point, something to refer back to. Well, if it took you 3 hours to create the PowerPoint, and it took you 5 hours before that to create content for the PowerPoint, and it took you 3 months prior to the 5 hours to create the PowerPoint or create content for the PowerPoint, and then the 3 hours to create the PowerPoint, and you only have 30 minutes to talk, what makes you think your audience is going to retain any of the information that you have on your fabulous, marvelous PowerPoint? They're not. You read books all the time. You don't remember the information. Many of you read a book a month. I can tell you're not retaining the information because your actions on your social media don't indicate what the book suggests that you will accomplish if you implement these actions. Same thing with your PowerPoint. Most people, speaking is 80% entertainment, 20% education. I'm not saying get up on stage and be a clown, but you as a speaker or as a potential speaker need to think about what your audience wants from you, not from the screen that has a PowerPoint that's tethered to a cord, that's tethered to a computer, that's sitting in front of or sitting on stage with you off to the right or left. That's a distraction. Your audience doesn't want that from you. Right? PowerPoint or power punt. You go to the football game and you see somebody punt a ball. Do you want the game to stop and then say, well, this is how you punt a ball. This is what happens when I drop the ball out of my hands and I kick it. And the goal is to have the ball follow this process and flip and rotate. Like, you don't want to hear that. You just want to see action. You want to see how high, how far, how fast the ball is going to go, who's going to catch it, and how it's going to get back to the other side of the field. That's all you want to see. You want to see action. Speaking is action. That's really all it is. What will your audience remember? Are they going to remember your PowerPoint? No, you don't remember your PowerPoint. They'll remember you. And your PowerPoint starts, and again, PowerPoint being the PowerPoint is a metaphor, but it starts with drawing your audience in the moment you take stage. And here, let me add this to this little conversation here. I'd say 95% of the time, and that's just a random Dom fact, but per my experience, more oftentimes than not, you are introduced when you get on stage. Hey, welcome to the stage, Dom Faussette. You don't need to get on the stage and reintroduce yourself. They just heard your name. If you're a great speaker, not one of the greats, you're working towards that. But if you're a great speaker, if you're good, you engage your audience, they'll remember your name. Just think about the last person's name you remembered. They connected with you. You retained that information because they connected with you. In a 30 to 45 minute talk, you only need to bring up two to 3 points. You don't need to provide information overload. Just 2 to 3 points that they can retain without a PowerPoint. You don't need a PowerPoint. See, people connect to stories. For many of you that have heard me speak, the reason why you connected with me is because my story is powerful. I'm vulnerable in my approach, and I'm not suggesting that everybody be vulnerable, although it's very beneficial. But if you're not comfortable with it, nobody wants to see you on stage crying and asking for tissue and blowing your nose. That's not the place for that. This is where practice comes into play. And telling your story is extremely important, but the ability to tell your story in a very dialed in or dialed down time frame. So you should be able to tell your story within 2 to 5 minutes. And it should make them think, make them cry, make them laugh. If you can do that within the first, I'd say 5 to 7 minutes of you on stage in a 30 to 45 minute presentation, you've got your audience. Now you just need to maintain that, but you can't maintain that with a PowerPoint. Now, if you're speaking to, say, an audience of a few thousand people, which at this point, most people that are on this Facebook or listening to this podcast, that's not going to be your audience starting out. Most of you would faint on stage, or your lips would turn white, or you would lose the saliva, like anxiety would kick in if you stood in front of 1,000 to 2,000 people. But if you're standing in front of 15 to 300, maybe 400 people, start with your story, right? Don't get on stage and tell people what to do. Another point that I didn't put in my list of 1 through 3 here is Don't be that speaker that gets on stage and ask people to turn off their cell phone. Don't. Be so good. Like, this is what happens in my experience. Be so good as a speaker that in the event somebody's cell phone goes off, half of the audience does this. They just look with disdain. Like, how dare you let your phone ring while Dom Faussette is talking? Or your name, just fill in the blank, replace my name. Why would you ask your audience to turn their cell phones off? Be a better speaker, and they'll naturally just put their phone on silent. Don't get on stage telling your audience what to do. That's horrible. You don't like being told what to do, so why would you tell an audience what to do? So I'm going to leave you with all great speakers were once terrible speakers. I'm looking down at my notes. Most of you know that I stuttered from the age of 5 to 21. If not, you do now. I was a horrible speaker, so horrible that even my close friends, my boy Kali is on here. I've known him since 5th grade. There were plenty of times that we had conversations. Disregard. I tried starting a conversation and he would just finish it for me. Because most people are impatient, and that's fine. But nobody really likes to listen to me as a stutterer. I was once a terrible speaker. I'm a good speaker now. I'm working towards being great. So just something to think about. Again, my name is Dom Faussette with Think, React, Lead. If you have questions, I ask that you share this because this is viable information. Speaking to me is so much more than being on stage, right? You want the hot girl? Be a good speaker. You want the dude of your dreams, the man of your dreams? Be a good speaker. You want the job? Be a good speaker, right? You want to learn how to negotiate? Start with being a great speaker, right? You want to be taken seriously? Be a great speaker. Every aspect in life to be successful starts with your ability to orate, your ability to speak, your ability to clearly get your message across in a very dialed in, short amount of time. Think about that. I am a speaker coach. If you need assistance, let me know. And share this message because everybody with social media and this age of everybody having a podcast, everybody doing videos, at least you should be, speaking is extremely important. Again, have a wonderful day and we will chat soon.
You've been listening to Think, React, Lead. To connect with your authentic purpose, contact Dom at www.thinkreactlead.com.